All right, I want to welcome everybody to the 8th of June Finance Committee meeting. Um, Wanted to call this meeting to order. No gavel, so calling it to order. The only vote that we're going to have to take is approval of the agenda. The agenda below is we're going to talk about some capital projects, contract thresholds, and if anybody has any other business, if applicable, to bring up. Um, and then if anybody has any comments at the end, and then we're going to adjourn. It's pretty short, sweet, to the point. So, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I,
ma'am.
I move to approve the June 8th, 2026 Finance Committee meeting.
Copy. And can I get a second?
I second.
That works. Thank you. And then just show of hands. I'm voting the affirmative. If you just show me your hands, I'll take that. One, two, three. So all four of us. Four yes. All right. So moving on. So we're going to talk about capital projects. I know there was a request to talk with us about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mark, and we'll go from Mr. Hutton. Sorry, and go. Well, it looks like Nancy wants to go first with that.
Uh, Good morning, Mr. Chair, Ms. Washington. Thank you for letting me go first. And so I just want to just give a quick overview and then I'm gonna pass it off to Mark if that's okay. So at the board work session on the second meeting in this month, our bond counsel, Burt Foreman, will present a bond resolution for an 8% borrowing, as we've done the past few years, to fund the district's capital and technology needs. As you're aware, there just isn't enough capacity in our general fund operating budget to meet those capital related needs. The proposed borrowing is actually $30 million. And that will not require a millage increase. So there will not be an impact to our taxpayers. Of this amount, 28 million will be for our operational needs, and the remaining 2 million will be used to fund the annual payment on the district special obligation bond, which is currently paid from the general fund. You may recall that one of the general fund expenditure reduction strategies included in the budget process included transferring $1.4 million of debt related costs from the general fund to the debt service fund. The proposed use of the $2 million from the borrowing proceeds is the mechanism that we will use to allow us to accomplish that objective, with the amount rounding up slightly to provide some additional flexibility. Because of the way that debt repayment is structured, it increases each year through the final repayment in 2035. And so just by way of background, the district previously issued special obligation bonds to finance a district-wide lighting project, which was designed to improve energy efficiency. And so the plan was to utilize the resulting savings from that to offset the principal and interest repayment. But as we work through this fiscal year and we're trying to create some additional capacity in our general fund, we are proposing to move that repayment of the debt from the general fund to the debt service fund, which is administered by the county. So are there any questions about that plan before I turn it over to Mark to discuss the projects? Okay, with that, I turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Nancy. Well, good morning, everyone. So I'll talk specifically about the 28 million. We met about a month and a half ago with the facility committee and Mr. Trapp. And what we did is I'll start off with the total needs for the district are $59.5 million. And that is every infrastructure project out there if we were to try to fix everything right now. What we did was we took nominations from the schools And then we applied a classification to those nominations. And the three classifications we used are critical, important, and desirable. Critical indicates that we would have a structural or a component failure within the next 1 to 2 years. So think about, your air conditioner at home is going to go out. You start planning on replacing that. Important indicates a moderate risk of a structural or a component failure within the next 3 to 5 years. And then the last category is just desirable. There are some desirable things such as playgrounds, awnings, and stuff like that that schools would like to be done. So we applied that to all of the projects. Then the next thing we did was we evaluated each project with that category against the strategic impact it would have against the district's strategic priorities. And if it was a high, it meant it aligned with 3 or more of our 4 strategic priorities. If it was a medium, it aligned with 2 priorities. And if it was a low, it was aligned with 1 or less of our strategic priorities. And then after that, I met with Nancy and we kind of looked at what we could borrow. And we kind of settled on about $10 million for our facilities this year. And so I took all of those projects and we racked and stacked them, and we came up with 44 critical projects that we would like to accomplish in this next year that are critical and high. So in other words, they meet the threshold of being structural or component failure within the next 1 to 2 years. And they also align with the strategic priorities of the district. As we got closer to the cut line, if we had some projects that were below that cut line that we could accomplish that might be, say, critical and medium, or they might be important and high, we moved them up, but we tried to stay within that $10 million threshold. And so with that, there's a total of 44 projects across the district, and I can go into those in detail if you would like me to, but most of them center around our HVAC, roofing. I have to replace the boiler this next year at Blythewood High School. Our activity bus fleet, part of that cost, we're asking to order 7 buses. We have quite a few of our activity fleet that's over 20 years old. And right now it's about a 2-year lead time to purchase a bus. So, unlike the car lot, nobody has buses sitting on the lot. You actually have to order the bus and then they start constructing the bus. So 7 would get us to where we need to be with our activity fleet and allow us to replace some of the activity fleet. Again, the activity fleet is not provided to us by the state. So we have currently 44 buses that are owned by the district, and that is the fleet that I need to maintain and replace. And then, so with that, our ask would be about $10 million on the facility side. On the information and technology side, what we're asking for is $16.5 million. Of the breakdown of that, 7.7 is for computer refresh. So we are in our 5-year cycle with our Windows laptops and desktops for our staff, and we're in a 4-year cycle with our student Chromebooks. So if I take a look at everything that's due to be refreshed in the next year, that comes out to about $7.7 million. We have about $5.3 million that are recurring contracts. So those are our subscriptions, our maintenance contracts, and our licensing for our IT equipment. And then we have about $1.2 million of operational expenses. So these are cablings, fiber optics, software development, damaging and repair of cabling that we would ask for this year. And some of this has been kind of kicked down the road the previous years, and we're kind of at the point that we really need to replace these kind of things. And then the last category would be non-annualized recurring expenses. So these are recurring expenses, these are recurring costs, but they don't happen every year. And they vary widely each year. And this year, what our goal is hoping to replace our battery backups in the school and in our data center, as well as replacing our cooling system inside the district office where our servers are. We've had a lot of issues with the cooling system. And of course, if our servers overheat, then we could potentially lose access to our data. And then the last ask would be for $1.5 million for us to be ready for the next phase of the Verizon building. So we're in phase 1 right now, and those funds have been allocated, and part of the 10 million ask for the facilities would include the generator at the Verizon building. But what I want to be able to do is be able to step forward. So as we look at phase two, the design process, any demolition that needs to be done, and so on, that was where this 1.5 million would be applied, so that would be a seamless transition from the 26-27 school year to the 27-28, and we could continue moving forward. This current school year, what we plan to do with the already allocated funds at the Verizon building is renovate to move Pinnacle Point so we can get out of our lease there, and then also renovate a wing for our special education services. As you know, they're spread out across the district right now, many of them in portables at Windsor Elementary. The Killian Special Needs Hub has some areas. We've got some folks in the district office. And so this would consolidate all of our special education services, and bring in some effectiveness and efficiencies by co-locating them. The current model right now with the construction is it looks like we could be starting demolition as early as late July in the Verizon building. And so phase one would right now be completed in December with a move-in date in the spring, depending on when Pinnacle Point could move in, as well as special education, understanding that they're in the spring semester. So we're kind of looking at move-in kind of January to spring break based on the availability of those personnel to move. So I'll stand by for any questions, or I can pull up projects, whichever you prefer.
All right. I got that. Can we also get this emailed to us, those projects that you spoke about, like the numbers? Because I took notes, but I prefer to have something
Absolutely.
a lot better that I can do anything. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, I do have a question. When we talk about the HVAC roof, but the Blythewood High School boiler, when was that replaced last? I thought that was. Do we
Uh,
know?
I can pull that data, sir. I don't have it off the top of my head. I know that we've had some severe issues with it this year. I believe it's been more than 5 years, but I can go back and verify for you.
Okay, yeah. For some reason, that's just in my brain that it was done like 5 or 6 years ago. So that's, but I mean, it could have been something else that I read and put it together, and that's just sitting in my brain like that. So,
Right. And it could be, we could have done a renovation too, versus a replacement, but I'll verify.
okay. All right. So, does anybody have any other questions about the capital projects and how that bond works?
I do. And it actually is more on the capital project side. I know that since we've been on the board from 2022, we have spent a lot of money on our capital projects, having to do the 8% bond. And so my question is, I'm seeing it looks like an increase every year in our capital projects needs. So one of the things that the board has talked about several times is a facility study. And I would like to know, when do we plan to implement that so that we'll know where all of our buildings are, what's going to be happening, future projections, how much money we're going to be spending on capital project needs.
Sure, ma'am. Actually, we're in the middle of the facility study right now. We kicked that off at the end of April. We went through the procurement process and have a company right now. They currently did a session in April with all of our we had representatives from all the different schools, administration, and so on, where they initially designed kind of what is the vision at the school level. And now they're currently going through each one of our facilities, visiting each one of our facilities, meeting with our administrators and principals. That will continue through the summer. As you know, we've got a fairly large district, and then we should be coming back to you in the fall, and they'll actually come brief the board as the output of the facility study. So we kind of expect that in September, October timeframe if everything remains on track.
Copy. Any other questions at
I
this time?
I do have one more question. The 5.3 million recurring contracts. I know that actually I'll just wait to save that because I know this is an item on the agenda for today. So I'm done, Mr. Dennis.
Uh, the 5.3, you mean tomorrow?
No, it looks like on the agenda for today, contract thresholds is on there. So I'll just
Oh,
wait.
okay. Got you. Got you. All right.
Thank you.
All right. So the facility study knew that was coming up, and you said that's going to be in September, October, the brief for the board, correct?
Yes, sir. I'll verify that date and I'll put it in the email with these documents to you.
Okay, perfect. And those documents, just make sure they go out to Miss Washington as well. And then Miss Wood, any of us that need them, just kind of just make sure we all get them. I don't have any questions on it. I'm definitely going to look at those documents when they come in. I'm really encouraged to see the facility study. I wish we could have had that done prior to this, but can't have everything. So we'll move on. All right. So moving on to the next item, business 3.2 contract thresholds. This was put on the agenda because looking at contracts and how the board has been getting the 250K updates of any new contracts so that we can keep track of that. But other districts in the past have had board approval for different levels of contracts. And I know it's been talk amongst board members what we want to do in that direction. So I would love to have any input about that before we move forward. So if anybody has any input, I would greatly appreciate it. All right. So no input. So basically what it's come down to.
Ms. Williams is about to say something.
Oh, there you go, Miss Williams.
Oh, well, no, you may be about to elaborate. I'm just not as familiar with like the thresholds that are established by other districts. So perhaps you were about to go in that same direction, Mr. Dennis. So I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh no, you're fine. So basically what some board members have mentioned and in the past is contracts that come up that are above a certain threshold, the actual board voting on them. There's a lot of districts in the state that do it. It helps, to me, it helps with budgeting and things like that, and it kind of takes it off of the district's plate for some big, heavy items that are pretty large. However, when I'm looking into it, state, how the state's got everything running with laws and everything, I can't find a definitive answer to if the board can actually vote on something like that because we are not a district that can up our own millage. Like we have to go towards county council to up millages and things like that. So we're not fiscally autonomy, whatever you want to, however you want to say it. So I haven't found that out yet. And talking to some other districts around, they do it. That's what they set in policy. And when I look into the laws, we can set anything we want to in policy. But I would love to have some input on that. If if it would be a good idea for the board to start voting on some of the heavier contract items. But the only problem that I personally see with that is if something is a contract and we get multiple bids on it and it goes through the procurement process, that kind of takes a vote out. It would just be a final vote of the approval of it, which, from my understanding, can be done, but the board couldn't pick what vendor we go with because from what I understand the law, that's outside the board's purview of what the board does. So does anybody have any questions about that more in detail?
Uh, Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Miss
Ms.
Wood.
Washington. No, I think just hearing it, I think I probably just need a little more clarification on where the voting happens, like the timing, right? Like, are you specifically talking about what you just mentioned, Mr. Dennis, related to like RFPs and things like that? Like, would the vote, would the board vote before we entertain that entire process? Or would you be voting on the back end after the selection? Like, I'm just like, I'm not sure where that fits in.
I will be
I think
honest.
I think it's more so on the contract side. So like the board receives um the real estate, like I'll say with the real estate. We get that before the board to actually vote on giving the superintendent the authority to pursue the real estate ventures, right? Multi-year contracts. The thing is, we're a $400 million plus budget entity. And so a lot of times we're not asking for board members aren't asking for $50,000 contracts. What we're saying is that we want more transparency and clarity on our multi-year contracts. Like Mr. Hutton just talked about the recurring contracts. Board members have no knowledge of what those contracts are. Construction and facility projects, the real estate transactions, anything that's going to obligate us beyond one fiscal year. Those are the kind of things that we're saying that we want to be able to um, because it's a part of the governance, it's a part of our budgeting process, it's a part of what we do to be fiscally responsible. And so a lot of districts actually do require board approval for construction, architectural services, purchasing land, long-term leases. A lot of those things come before the board for approval to give the superintendent permission to do those type of things. And so like I said, nobody's asking to see anything under 50,000, 50 up to $50,000. But what I also know is we don't have a policy that says that. And so we one need to look at what would policy language look like. Two, what does that authority look like? And then because I always refer to like our large districts like Horry County and Charleston. Even in Charleston's finance committees, they bring up before the finance committee an entire spreadsheet of contracts up to $250,000, not just with the name and the amount, but actually what it's for, who the company is, what services the district is going to be getting. And that's just information only. But things that are larger actually come before the board for approval. And so I think one of the things that we also have to understand is our procurement code gives us a limited I guess gives us limited authority to be able to have any type of authority over procurement, but I don't think that's what the board is asking for because to me those are two different things. I think what the board is saying, we want to have the authority to give the superintendent permission to pursue those things versus the superintendent is doing it on her own. We don't have any knowledge of what those contracts are, who those companies are, what services they're providing. We're just getting it information only like this number that I got today, 5.3 million in recurring contracts. Never seen those companies, don't know who they are, don't know what services they're providing, but this is $5.3 million that the board going to be giving is going to be spending. And so I think that's where what we're saying, not so much the anything up to $50,000. Our policy only allows budget transfers, but we don't have any policy that dictates authority, like board approval required. So basically what we're saying is that the board votes before the district executes, if that makes sense. And like I said, I do know, like Mr. Dennis said, there are other districts where they do bring those multi-year contracts, construction contracts, land purchases, which we do the land purchases because we had to do that for, we do those big purchases. We had to do that for the Verizon building. And so I think we just need to get clear on what contracts present like enough financial risk to warrant board oversight. Okay, I think that's where the board needs to get clear. And then we also need to get clear on what do we want our thresholds to be? What is going to be information only? What is going to require board approval? And then to me, anything that's going to commit the district to something long term, like these recurring contracts, I really think it should be more than information to the board. It needs to be, this is what it's for. This is what our uses are. These are, I don't even know about the company process. It's just, this is what it's for. This is how much money we're asking and XYZ. So I hope all of that I just spit out makes sense.
Yes, it made sense to me. Um, you know, when I think of, and here's my take on it, when I look at how we're spending money, the multi-year contracts, that's more of a focus that I think the board should look at, because that's if we vote on something and we know we're going to be paying for it for 3 to 4 years, we need to make sure that we keep that on our record so that we're seeing it. So when other things come in front of us, we understand, hey, we've already asked, and not to say it's the same thing, but to ensure that we're doing everything fiscally responsible. I think that's the great thing. Now, for a single year contract, that's something that's done a lot shorter and faster. So, I mean, that would definitely look into something for, how could I say it? For a single year, I think it would have to have a greater threshold for a bigger project. But for multi-year, I think that's something that, and I know the board, even before I got on the board, I heard the board talking about it at some board, meetings and things like that. And then now I know that we're got real serious on policy and starting to look at policy and seeing how we can go forward and work together with administration, and also take a lot of guesswork off, because if this is brought before us before all the money and stuff is spent, the way I look at it is, we would know if the board is to entertain it. The board might not entertain it straight up, and therefore, that might save us a few $1,000s here and there if we're hiring a company to get us some information. That would put it on operations and everything to come to us and say, hey, this is what we're looking at doing, and then moving forward from there. Are there any other questions on that or ideas?
May I ask a question to Ms. Williams?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Ms. Williams, once we get through budget season, is it possible for you to reach out to another, like one of those larger districts, and just kind of find out? Because I've been looking at different policies trying to, you know, piece things together, but I wanted to get your input just to see if like I said, once we get through budget season, and just to see if you all could like share some information of what that looks like in other districts.
Certainly. That's exactly what I was thinking, Ms. Washington. I said, I'm gonna reach out because logistically I want to see how it works, right?
Yeah.
Because I just like your comment too about, procurement being separate from this. In my brain, they're still kind of connected because you don't want to go too far down, So logistically, I want to talk to a couple other districts to see how they make that work, to figure out too, like how much time do they build into certain processes because they know they have to seek board approval. So yeah, definitely, I'll reach out.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when we're reaching out, I've done a lot of extensive reading through Charleston's policies, and I think that's a great place to start. And then Horry County would be next. I haven't reached out directly to them except for seeing people at events and things like that for school board association, where I kind of talk to them about it. Just to get an idea, but been reading their policies, so I think that's something we'll look forward to hearing more from, especially from the administrative side of things. Trying to keep this short and sweet. Are there any other questions about the contract thresholds and what we're looking at doing, trying to get a good policy together to protect us in the future? All right. So any other business if applicable, 3.3, basically I put that on there to see if anybody wants to bring to the floor something that you want us to start looking at possibly for the next meeting. Not sure when the next meeting is going to be, but for the next meeting or anything like that.
I just have just one quick thing, as we're talking about policies and maybe updates. I was wondering if the board would be willing to entertain, the creation of an official fund balance policy. I know that we mentioned fund balance a little bit, in policy, but it's not an official one. And I just wanted to see if that would be something the board would be interested in entertaining.
I will add it to the policy list. Me and Dr. Franklin, we can get to work on doing the research.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that's good.
Perfect. All right. Anybody else have anything?
Sir, just one quick question from me as I'm in my first year here. Is what's the correct way to do with the committees? So I briefed the facility committee prior to this. Did I do that in the wrong order from the board's perspective? Should I come to the finance committee first? Because all of these projects went through the facility and safety and security committees first.
Okay, so
It's no order.
there's no order, but I think you kind of did it correct, but it could, I mean, there's 1,000 different ways we can play this, but coming from the facility side, because you guys are looking at it to get the information to see where we need to go. So I think that's the great place. That's something that I will look into a little bit more and see how we're going to go forward in the future. Because we got to remember now, all these committee meetings, this is new within the year. So we're trying to, how I see the committees working is getting committees to work together and getting information so it's not just always one person doing it or one department doing it, and it can break up a project and help. Could it increase time? Yes, it could, but it could also increase efficiency. So that's just something I will look back into, and I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that being said, does anybody have? Okay, we're going to move on to 4.4, committee member comments. Does anybody have any comments? I always like to give the floor for comments because that's just something I've always done when I chaired anything. Nobody has any comments, so I'm going to move on. Okay. My quick comment to the public is what I want to say about this committee is it is one of the committees that I think is needed and does a lot of work behind the scenes, because a lot of times it's just crunching numbers. I know I just want to say thank you, Mrs. Williams, for everything that you do, because you do a lot. And then when I get those emails and those documents from you for finance and I'm looking over them, I scratch my head and just say thank you to the finance department. So thank you all very, very much for everything. That's all I got. So if there is no other business required, we are going to adjourn. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.